입니다. Good morning, everyone. I'm your coach Joe. 여러분이 오늘 이렇게 저의 세연님 안녕하세요. 자, 오늘 제가 한 운동을 잘 보시고 따라 하시면 여러분들 저렇게 될 수 있습니다. 자, 영어 좀 공부합시다 우리 오늘.
Nasdaq is indicated down by about 62. Of course, the Treasury market really
영어 공부합시다 우리.
attention to the yields at this point for the 10-year sitting at 1.763%. So we've been in that very tight range, that Goldilocks range that the markets really liked. You go from 1.6 to 1.7, you move beyond that range, and all of a sudden people start to pay attention. So right now, 1.73%. Yields were up yesterday too, and the spread tightened a little bit yesterday. You're going to see right now 30 years at 2.45%, 2 years all the way down at 0.154%. Let's also bring up the squawk stack, because so many stories that you could put in this. We had a long discussion this morning about what we would wind up looking at. We'll go ahead and keep it right now for the Dow Futures, the Nasdaq Futures, and the 10-year, because that action in the 10-year could very well drive the Nasdaq, and we'll see if the Dow continues to outperform. And of course, you've got Viacom and Discovery in there, and after the big declines those stocks saw, after the big run-ups they saw in the months ahead of that, Viacom's indicated up by about 3.6% today, Discovery up by 1.6%, and of course, we're all continuing to watch and dig through what happened with Archegos, Andrew.
Thanks, Bex. I'm thinking, I kind of want to add, it's not huge numbers, but, Morgan Stanley or maybe a Goldman to this list.
Goldman,
I don't know.
Yeah. We're at Credit Suisse this morning. Right.
We can show you Credit Suisse. That's actually, Credit Suisse and Nomura have actually moved in larger ways, but
이자가 맨날 오르고 이자가 오르니 이제
I like the Goldman and Morgan Stanley too because they're not moving.
은행이 돈을 많이 벌었네.
Scuttlebutt. I think Archegos asked, "Hey, can you guys just hold off? Let's all talk about this before we do anything." And Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs were like, okay. And then, did you see that there's a commercial where they're talking about? I'm pretty sure it's not going to happen. And it's Tracy, the actor who was in that
yes,
role.
it's the one, right.
And he's like,
Tracy.
if you see a bear, the one thing you don't want to do is run. And he goes, and everybody else stands still, and he turns around and takes off. And that's like the Goldman and Morgan. We're like,
Yes, and all of a sudden you realize.
let's talk about this. And then Goldman,
let me give you a couple details on how that all went down.
운동 시작하겠습니다. 워밍업 해야 돼. 워밍업은 이렇게
Let's just go through this. Here's what we're
Warming
looking
up.
at this
Warming up.
moment in terms of these margin calls that cause all these ripple effects. We're learning how some of the banks helped Bill Wang make all these large leverage bets less than a decade after he was punished for his part in the insider trading scheme. By the time Nomura and Credit Suisse announced yesterday that they had faced losses that could be highly significant, Goldman and Morgan, as Joe and Beck were just mentioning, had already finished unloading their positions. But in terms of how this happens, it's a little more complicated than a bank just turning around and saying, we're out. What was happening last week was you saw some of the big Chinese names that Bill Wang had been in falling precipitously. By midweek, you had the Viacom situation, which was also something they owned, and obviously Discovery as well. Now, it was at that point that the bank started to call and make margin calls, effectively saying, can you come up with the money? It was less clear as the week went on that they could come up with the money. And yes, as Joe just said, they were saying, please give us more time. Now, interestingly, some of the banks, including Goldman, contractually have to give their clients time. In fact, they had what was called a margin account, and that meant that they would have to get a 24 hours notice, effectively, to, quote, cure the problem. That's what would happen. They have to cure the problem. However, Morgan Stanley and Credit Suisse, the way their accounts are set up are different. They can actually almost unilaterally call a default, if you will. Now, the second a bank calls a default on an Archegos, it creates a cross default, if you will, for all the banks. And so that then effectively the stampede begins, and that's what happened. So you had banks like Goldman Sachs and others who wanted to get out, who couldn't effectively or couldn't press the button to say go. They actually had to wait for Credit Suisse and Morgan Stanley to go first, which raises some questions about why Credit Suisse or to get out, effectively to call the default, didn't get out of more of these names themselves as fast as Goldman and Morgan appear to have. We'll see.
Well, Goldman and Morgan had to have been bracing for this and be prepared for it, and just been ready to move a lot faster, which is something Goldman is known for.
It appears that Goldman was waiting to do this. They wanted to, and Morgan Stanley. I think interestingly, you look at who was running those banks, and also their role in the financial crisis. And I'm thinking of James now, Morgan Stanley, who's seen the crisis. David saw the crisis, and I think that if you look at some of the names who were some of the other firms at the time, I mean, Credit Suisse now and some of the others, I'm not going to make judgments about risk management, but nonetheless, I think they were all on it, so to speak, but not clearly on it enough in terms of what Credit Suisse and Nomura are now dealing with. But they also had potentially even bigger loans outstanding, so it might have been harder for them to get out as quickly. So,
I guess my other question, Andrew, and I don't know if you found this in your reporting, but I wasn't able to figure this out yesterday. At what point did all of these banks realize that this guy was basically using the same stuff for margin loans at different places? At what point did they realize?
머리를 어제 제가 잘랐습니다.
Here and here and here.
제가 잘랐어요, 머리를.
Prime brokerage he was working at.
right. It's funny. I think that most of them actually did, I think more of them understood it than didn't, at least by midweek. There is, at the moment,
By midweek, but
there
when
is
did they figure it
action.
out? Was it a week ago?
That's what I'm saying. I would say at least a week ago, but I would also say that at the moment it doesn't appear that there's actually a real allegation.
안녕하세요. 박정님 일 끝나자마자 하니까 좋네요. 안녕하세요.
We'll see. Maybe that will change.
박정희님
But
안녕하세요.
internally, as you talk to people, nobody's saying that Archegos said that, didn't tell them about one piece of this and only told them about others. That may come out in the end because of the way total return swaps work and how some of this leverage was being applied. So we'll see how it all plays out. But I think if you were to get inside of Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley, they would not tell you that they did not understand the completeness of the picture.
I mean, if they did understand it, that baffles me even more. If you understood that in some cases he was leveraged, 8 times, in some cases 20 times, if you understood that and you went ahead and gave some of that leeway for it, just raises the question of what has happened to the oversight. I'd be shocked if they knew that for a long period of time, just because that's crazy. Why would you, basically be in bed with those people if you realize what he's doing? What that guy was doing was just nuts.
I'm trying to glean something that we can learn from this. So overall, I'm not coming up with a whole lot. I don't know. A week from now, I don't know if we're ever mention Archegos again. No, I think we learned that. It's usually whenever.
잘하셨어요. 족발하고 막국수가 되게 건강식이죠.
Every time.
The other thing is
시장에서 파는 거는 최고로 건강하진 않겠지만 그래도 치킨 그런 거보단 낫죠.
in gamification.
아, 족발 먹고 싶다.
Take advantage of that move. And now we're seeing that there's someone that's not going to be happy.
아, 족발 먹고 싶다.
The people who like them, then they should, you know, and I guess that's what.
한국 가면 진짜 족발 많이 먹고
We offered
와야지.
it to you, you bought it, we got money, you know, it helps our balance sheet, and you're left, you know, with you thought you're getting an $80 stock, you got a $40 stock. So that
But look, the
I don't
companies
think
are
it's that
taking
easy to do
long-term.
that. They should be able, they should be able to do it, there's gonna be repercussions, and people are gonna be unhappy and feel like they were, you know, sold a bill of goods. But you probably should have known better. We're having Nathanson on. He never in his wildest, he's kind of, earlier he wrote this report like a week ago saying, yeah, we picked Discovery and Viacom, and yeah, pretty good calls. We never thought it would go to 100, but, you know, never thought Viacom would get to, and it was up like 10 times or something, almost from the lows, from when, but they had no idea that it was going to be suddenly, they thought, yeah, well, we were right about the streaming. That wasn't it, really, that might have started it, but I feel bad for the
But Joe, if I could, connect what Bill Wang was doing to Reddit, because if you really understand the trades, what was actually quite clever about it, and it goes to the whole idea of who's really behind all of this stuff, he was surfing on top of them, and he was taking advantage of the fact that these were highly shorted names, and that he could do it as a total return swap, because it would have the same forcing. There is a GameStop piece of what he
But
was
it's
doing.
not clever when you see how it.
와, 2만 원짜리 많아요?
I appreciate that. I'm just
clever by a
saying.
factor of like 5.
저는 장충동 가서
Clever by a factor of 5.
5만 원짜리 특대 먹고 쟁반국수 먹고
Yeah, broke. One.
파전 먹고
That I would say that we could probably take out of this,
막걸리
more specific to leverages. Okay, leverage
한
always
잔
is
정도.
bad.
네.
Leverage always can come back and bite you. And I guess the bigger question is what
지난번에 한국 갔을 때
regulatory oversight of leverage?
막걸리 먹었는데
Could be that, you know,
너무 달고 맛 없더라고요. 옛날 막걸리처럼 좀 안 다른 거 먹고 싶어.
Federal Reserve sets the agenda. Wall Street has come up with ways around that with different things that you can trade, like swaps,
What happened
futures,
to
different items like that.
what happened to family outfits need to file a 13A, but they never do?
Yep.
They're required to
Right.
file one, but they don't.
What has happened to the regulatory
Where is
oversight?
that? What is that law on the books for? If it's, I think there might be a lot of laws that are on the books that aren't enforced or that aren't adhered to. That's what
Well,
another
which
one.
gives you the
I think
idea
Gary
that
Gensler's
there should
gonna have
be
a
more
lot of
money
work to
spent
do
on
in this
places
new
like the
role.
IRS and the SEC, right? Maybe they need more resources to be able to leverage stuff like this. Anyway,
Bureaucracies
That's
are
our
notoriously, you know, I don't know whether more money helps or whether they just, they are what they are. But,
Okay, that's the show, guys.
the IRS, they figured out that they can get back something like $7 for every dollar they put back on enforcement, because if you know the cops are watching on whatever beat, you tend to be a little more on the straight and narrow and not take risks with things. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
don't run,
Anyway,
don't
up
run if
next.
you see a bear. Just, you know, just don't run.
Goodbye. Up next, a look at some pandemic stock plays that are hitting new highs despite the reopening of the economy. Got that story next. And coming up at 6:30, we have an exclusive interview with the mysterious buyer who paid $69 million for NFT artwork created by the artist Beeple. The man known as Medical Man. How do you say his name, Jim? Joe?
Medicoven?
Medicoven?
I have no idea.
Medicoven.
Is it like Stan, he made up a name? What's his name? His name.
All right, we're gonna be like 1980 watching The Miracle on Ice. We're just gonna say it and stick with it. That's what Al Michaels said. Anyway, Squawk Box will be right back.
아하.
Welcome back, everybody. The CDC Director, Dr. Rochelle Walensky, out with a new warning that the uptick in cases in COVID could mean another surge is on the way.
I'm going to reflect on the recurring feeling I have of impending doom. We have so much to look forward to, so much promise and potential of where we are, and so much reason for hope, but right now I'm scared. I know what it's like as a physician to stand in that patient room, gowned, gloved, masked, shielded, and to be the last person to touch someone else's loved one because their loved one couldn't be there. I know what it's like when you're the physician, when you're the healthcare provider, and you're worried that you don't have the resources to take care of the patients in front of you.
In the meantime, President Biden called for governors and mayors to reinstate mask mandates to help avoid a fourth surge. However, in the midst of all of this, there is some good news. A CDC report that was released yesterday confirmed that the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines are proving highly effective at preventing infections in real-world
Ba-da-dee-da, la-la-la-la.
We run through some of the data on that. It's incredibly impressive and definitely gives a lot of people hope. Investors, meantime, are continuing to show pandemic beneficiaries love. Names like Home Depot, Target, trading near all-time highs. In fact, they set all-time highs in trading yesterday. These were stocks across the board. It was pretty impressive to watch. You had Home Depot, Lowe's, Target. You had the home builders like D.R. Horton, Lennar, and Pulte. And joining us right now to talk about this is Stephanie Link. She's chief strategist at Hightower. She's also a CNBC contributor. And Stephanie, I was watching the list of the, not just 52-week highs yesterday, these are all-time highs going back to the IPOs of these companies going back decades and decades for many of them. You had Darden, you had AutoZone, you had CarMax, you had O'Reilly Auto, you had Snap-on, you had Otis, you had Whirlpool. All of those names, a lot of them that have done so well during the pandemic, continuing to push higher to all-time highs. So what do you think of this as an investor, and which way are you trading it?
Good morning, Becky. It's great to see you. Look, we've talked about housing being the bright spot of the economy right? People are migrating from the cities, they're going to the suburbs. We're hearing from companies like D.R. Horton and Pulte, as you mentioned, that millennials are now starting to buy because of the low rates, because of the liquidity, because of extra checks in their pockets, the savings rate at 20.5%. So this is a theme that isn't going away. I do watch the mortgage application numbers. They've been coming down a little bit. New home sales last month fell 18%. Really tough compares, but still very, very healthy. And the whole point of housing is that there's only 2 months worth of supply out there. So that's the reason. We just have to watch the affordability part of it. But to your point of, Home Depot, they're just crushing it, right? And this HD Supply acquisition that they did, that's the MRO division sector in the economy. It's a $51 billion total addressable market. So the pro is doing well, the consumer is doing well. They're doing great in terms of operating leverage. Target, Brian Cornell has just done an absolutely terrific job, and they're taking market share. Remember, we talked back in February, I think, that the comps were up 30% in January, up 20% in February. So they're clearly taking share. And on top of that, he's doing a great job on the margin front. So I actually think, with the ones I actually own Stanley Black & Decker and PPG. Maybe they're just not the kind of off the beaten path, if you will. But I think you can continue to play this theme, and there's a lot of ways to do it.
And that's my question, Stephanie. For the ones, we can talk more about PPG and Stanley Black & Decker in just a moment, but if you talk about those big name companies that have done so well, they're not off the beaten path. They have done incredibly well for a very long time on the idea that there was no place else to go. You think that trend continues, that these are not things that are going to say, okay, vaccines are here, COVID gets knocked down, we're back out and we're changing our patterns. You think some of these things are kind of set into long-term things that will last well beyond the pandemic?
I do. If you look at the purchase index, it's up 4 weeks in a row, and that is telling you that
가방을 좀
jobs are more important than rates, right?
좋네,
And
가방
so
좀.
as jobs continue,
저 비싼 거니까 싸구려.
people will start to spend more,
오.
and they are spending on their
오,
homes.
씨.
And so these companies, at the same time,
아, 안
are doing
되겠다.
a terrific job in terms of
이 가방 비싼 가방이에요.
market share gains and spending.
이거 그때 얼마 전에 샀냐면
Right? I mean, look at what's
30만 원인가?
on Target. He totally changed
아,
in
이거
terms of what they're offering.
싸구려 가방에다 해야 되겠다.
And I've always said, if you can offer what the consumer wants, the consumer is going to buy, right? So I do think these trends are in place. We do have tough comparisons. We've got to watch valuations always. That's why I say we can, kind of find some of the names that maybe haven't participated as well. But I still think these
싸구려 가방에다가
want to own. And they're just
무게를 넣고 운동하면 좋을 것 같아요.
And then when it comes to PPG and Stanley Black & Decker, these are just derivative plays that you kind of look off of this, things that people haven't necessarily figured out yet?
Yeah, Stanley Black & Decker was a terrible performer last year. I own it, so it was a terrible performer. It kind of hurt. But if you believe tools and storage continues to be strong, 30% of tools and storage at Stanley Black & Decker is Home Depot and Lowe's. So you're going to get the exposure there, but you also get exposure on the industrial side and on the energy side. So I would have always said that Stanley Black & Decker is a stay-at-home and actually a go-back-to-work kind of a name. And it's just the valuation is just really very, very cheap. PPG, they're hitting it on all cylinders, right? It's industrial, it's coatings, it's aerospace. They did 2 acquisitions, and they completed 2 acquisitions already year to date. They have another 2 that they're about to close, and that'll be synergistic. They're always kind of like a special situation story, like so. I like those 2 names, but I do like these other ones as well. I think you can own a basket, if you will. So it's great to see you. Thank you. Good to see you. Okay, thank you.
Okay, coming up on the other side of this break, we're going to bring you a new update from Bill Ackman on his massive SPAC. Still looking for a target. We'll talk about it. As we hit your break, check out shares of Apple supplier Foxconn posted a lower than expected profit for its fourth quarter, a decline of 4% versus a year ago. We're right back after this.
아, 새소리 들리네. 새소리 들려. 이봐 혼자서 잘하시네요. 네, 혼자서 잘해요. 이발을 쉬워요. 잘했죠? 되게 쉬워요. 이발을 하는데 10분이면 돼요. 10분이면 5분이다, 5분. 훨씬 좋지. 제가 그러니까 미용실 갔을 때보다 훨씬 만족해요. 내가 하고 싶은 대로 하니까. 미용실 가서 하면 잘 봐주지 않더라고요. 깨끗하고 내 바리깡 쓰고 미용실 그거 이렇게 남의 거 이렇게 막 하고 그러면 좀 그렇잖아요.
Welcome back to Squawk Box this morning. Bill Ackman says that his SPAC, Pershing Square, tonight Holdings does not expect to announce a target by the end of this quarter. Now, the blank check company down more than 20% from its all-time high in mid-February. Ackman said he's likely to launch a second SPAC, in fact, after the first one finishes a deal. Now, of course, he's got to do that first. Pershing Square posted a record year in 2020, returned 70.2% on its investments, helped by a credit hedge ahead of the market collapse. We talked about it a lot over this last year. Hedge fund has returned 5.9% so far this year through March 3rd. But hard to see what he's going to buy. I know, early on we talked about Airbnb and Bloomberg. He's got a lot of money. He's the biggest SPAC out there, and given all of the money that's chasing so many deals, hard to see what he's going to come up with. But
How much is it, Andrew? How much does he have? I didn't realize it was the biggest.
it's the largest SPAC in history. I think it's in the order of $5 billion. I can tell you exactly, but it's the biggest out there, and as a result, the kinds of targets it has to go after are so much larger than just about anybody else. There's a very small universe of companies that he effectively has the opportunity to buy. It makes it more complicated.
I guess Herbalife out of the question for
Yeah.
coming up, we have an exclusive interview with the mysterious buyer who paid $69 million for NFT artwork created by the artist Beefle. 4 billion? 4?
It's 4.
It's 4.
But it's set the record straight.
This man is known as Medico, but I have no idea. I want to be known as Flea from now on. Is that taken? Oh, that's right. That's taken by that one guy. Maybe Lice Klaus. Anyway, join us after the break. Right now, here's a look at yesterday's S&P 500 winners and losers.
질문하셔도 됩니다. 대답을 해드리겠습니다. 질문하셔도 됩니다. 질문하셔도 됩니다. 쓸데없는 질문을 하지 마시고 쓸데있는 질문을 하셔도 됩니다.
Good morning, everybody. Time to wake up. Time for some breakfast. We are serving up the squawk stack this morning, and you're going to see after a mixed day for the markets yesterday, where the Dow was up by about 100 points, but then the S&P was down slightly, and the Nasdaq was down more significantly. It's a repeat of that this morning. Nasdaq futures right now indicated down by about 0.4%, but the Dow futures down not only up yesterday, it set another record close. I think that's the 17th that we've seen just this year. In the early part of this year, Dow Futures this morning indicated up another 0.25 percentage point. We're still keeping an eye on Viacom and Discovery. They're stocks bouncing back after some of the big declines that they had seen following the big run-ups that they'd seen in the last couple of months. Discovery right now trading up by about 1.5%, and Viacom, the pre-market, trading up by about 3%. And then the 10-year note is the one we're watching so closely. That's yielding 1.771% right now.
좋은 방법이 없을까?
That was probably
아, 여기
responsible
있다.
for the
좋은
declines
방법이 있다.
that we saw, the pressure in the
아, 되게
Nasdaq.
좋은 방법이 생겼다. 그래?
Thanks, Bex. Meantime, we have I'm so excited for this, a first TV interview with the crypto investor.
좋은 방법이
NFT at Christie's, and for that, we're
생겼어.
going to get right over to Robert. Frank, Robert.
아, 좀 더 길어야 되는데.
Andrew, good morning. Well, the world knows him as Metacoban. He is the mysterious crypto investor who paid that $69 million for an NFT. His real name is Vinyesh Sundaresan. He's the Singapore-based CEO of Portkey Technologies. He's the co-founder of BitAccess, that's a Bitcoin ATM provider, and he is the founder of the Metaverse NFT project. Vinyesh, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
So the question that everyone was asking when they saw these headlines is why would anyone pay $69 million for a JPEG and a hyperlink?
Sure. I think this is a significant piece in art history, and sometimes these things take some time for everyone to recognize and realize, but I'm okay with that. I had the opportunity to be part of this very important change or shift in how art has been perceived for centuries. This is a change in medium. That means that there's going to be hundreds and thousands of people from around the world who are going to adopt this medium, a digitally native medium, to monetize art, and there's going to be economy around it. And the first piece of such a important movement going forward
22,000 ether that you used to purchase this. What do you think you originally paid for the ether that you used to buy this? And when did you first start investing in crypto?
Sure. So yeah, I've been in the crypto space since 2013. It's not that simple to define what I paid for the Ethereum because I've been not like a maximalist investor, like investing in just one of these technologies. So I've been investing in Bitcoin, Ethereum, Polkadot, even Flow. That's something very recent. So like the money I paid to Christie's, end of the day, was in Ethereum, but it's not the Ethereum I initially bought it, right? So it's over a period of time, and it's worth $69 to me. $69 million to me.
이야.
And just to get people
아,
to
좋아.
your success, you know, you didn't start out as a crypto investor with a lot of money. How much did you originally invest in crypto? And you must be worth, what, hundreds of millions? Are you a crypto billionaire at this point?
I didn't start with any money actually. So I didn't. It's not like I put in my savings and I started. I started working for crypto, right? Like once I discovered crypto, I've been day in day out working on crypto since 2013, early 2013. I've made multiple startups, but all along the way, the more important thing was
Ah.
about all these companies that were growing in the space and the opportunity it gave me to invest in them. Not as equity because that's still very hard to get into, right? Like it's only for a few people to get into the equity rounds of a lot of companies. But crypto gave me the opportunity to participate in high growth technologies, right? Like in the early stages. So that's how mostly I made my money. My net worth, you know, it depends on where the crypto market is. So I could say I don't want to give a specific number to my net worth. It varies, but what I could say is most of my money is not in NFTs, right?
이렇게도 다리 운동 되네?
Hi, thanks so much for being here, Vina. We've been speculating that whoever bought this was doing it because they wanted to diversify their assets and have something else, so you could put it in something besides just some sort of crypto. Is that why you did it?
Actually, it's definitely larger than that. NFTs could become an interesting asset class, and I think that's something only time would tell us and as to whether that will work out. But for me, I think the model of patronage of art and how history who have been patrons to the art and culture and artists in general has now changed. Like there is this new capital that's now available across the world, and I think the more important thing to focus here is to look at, you know, like artists and new form of art that's going to be supported, and that's one of the reasons why I got into this auction, because that's my focus into the future also. Like I'm very interested in supporting artists from diverse backgrounds from across the world, and that's what I will be doing through the Metaverse Fund also.
Hey, Vignesh, last week we had Yellen and Powell both, I don't know, it said some concerning things about crypto, Bitcoin specifically. I know you probably saw it. So we had a move from about 60,000 back to 50,000, and everyone wonders, are we headed for one of those moves that we've seen in previous years that will, when you go from 20 back down to 4,000, that'll get your attention. So it went back to 50. Today it's almost back to 60. It's up like another 3% today. It immediately, so in the last 2 or 3 days, it's gained another 20%. It's not a currency, but do you think that it is a currency, but I have trouble trying to figure out how you use it. But do you think that there are concerns about a Yellen, a Powell, regulators around the world to somehow harness this and just pull the rug out from all the crypto investors, or it is already too big and decentralized?
I definitely think the movement has been growing over years, and we've had the space to grow and experiment a lot over the past few years. I mean, if regulators were, even more tighter in the previous few years, maybe it would have stifled the innovation even more. But I think we are at a point where we've seen the positive impacts of crypto in the world also, and so definitely before something happens in terms of the regulators deciding against it, because initially it was all just the negative news about crypto and it being used maybe nefarious activities that was on the news, right? But now I hope that with this kind of purchase and this kind of art movement also happening on top of crypto, it will be looked at as more of something that's net positive to the world, and that will also go into the consideration of various regulators in the world, because are you going to ban art also, right? Like that's the real question here to various countries, because like an artist in a country like Philippines or Thailand or India now can make their first $1,000, $500 on the internet, and it has made this movement has made it easy. So I think what crypto meant 5 years ago and what it means is very different. So I think all these governments and regulators definitely reconsider and look at what positively crypto has done.
I want to go back to the auction and just take us through your mind when you walked into the auction. I mean, you didn't walk in virtually, if you will. Did you have a high price? Do you have a price in your mind? You say, I'm not going over this. And then you saw it go over and you said, okay, I will go. Did you think I'll go up to $100 million worth of, in terms of, just tell us about as you're watching the price go up, what you're thinking.
Sure. So, I mean, the way Christie's work, the auction works is that you cannot really, there is always a max bid, right? Like, because they are the ones who set a max bid limit on your account. So it's not like you can just walk in there and just keep raising the bids. And the other part is you cannot just put a high bid, right? Like it's always 250K above the previous bid, and that's how it works. So when I was speaking to Christie before the auction, I got this idea about this going to be quite competitive. So yeah, we did make sure that we have a higher limit. I don't want to disclose what and talk about it now, because it's now done, and I'm happy that we could acquire for what we paid for. But yeah, definitely I was very motivated and ready to go even beyond what we paid for it at this auction at that point. And I just believe that it is that important of a piece in history, art history.
And yes, one last question, and we thank you so much for joining us today. What do you think that $69 million Beeple will be worth in 5 or 10 years?
So because it's an NFT and because it's purely digital and it's the starting piece of this whole movement, it very much depends on where crypto is going to go, where this movement is going to go. But it will not be a simple resale, right? Like it's not going to be like it goes back on Christie's and it gets resold. There will be multiple forms to it, and you would see that it's going to take its own life. That's what makes NFTs very interesting, because it need not be just a piece of art. It can be 1,000 other things. I know, like I'm just speaking vague right now, but there is a lot of ways for me to monetize this piece also without disturbing the sanctity of the piece. So that is the route I will take. I don't consider, or I don't want to be reselling it anytime soon, or probably even in 10 years from now. I'm not thinking about reselling the piece.
Great. And yes, Andreessen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Back to you, Becky.
Robert, that was kind of amazing. We've had billionaires who come on who look like they're coming from their yachts, from their fancy artwork on the walls and everything. Vignesh does not look like he's living that way. He looks like he's living more like a Warren Buffett. We'll see. Who knows if he's put some of that into other assets. Anyway, when we come back, Some customers report being double charged tens of thousands of dollars for Tesla cars. We have the details next. And later, we're going to talk to documentary filmmaker Ken Burns on streaming, the future of film, and his newest movie. Squawk Box will be right back.
아이야. 여러분 다시 한번 말씀드리지만 유산소할 힘으로 유산소할 힘으로 운동 끝나 유산소할 힘으로 근력운동 열심히 하세요. 근력운동 유산소할 힘으로 근력운동 열심히 하세요. 유산소 하지 마세요. 지금 이게 유산소지 뭐야. 아셨죠? 여기에 있는 제 고객들 여기 있는 사람도 유산소 안 합니다. 오케이? 저처럼 운동해요. 여기 있는 사람도 유산소 안 했어요. 오케이? 유산소 안 했습니다. 유산소 할 힘으로 근력 운동 스쿼트 한 세트 더, 푸시업 한 세트 더, 턱걸이 한 세트 더 하세요. 아셨죠?
Coming up, what to make of the media stocks hot in the Archegos frenzy? Where do we go from here? Top analyst on this next. The talk biohacking on CBS and Discovery. Squawk Box. Be right back. 유산소 할 힘으로 근력 운동 더 열심히 하세요. CBS and Discovery both fell in trading yesterday, though not nearly as much as the prior week amid forced liquidation. Positions linked to Archegos Capital. Joining us now is Michael Nathanson, founding partner of Nathanson. I talked about you earlier. I don't know if your ears are running, Michael, but reading some of your pieces before everything hit the air conditioner, the excrement, last week, you were feeling pretty good. You were feeling pretty good, weren't you? We never recommended Discovery before, but we did a pretty good call there. And Viacom.
That worked out.
But you're like, wow, we are great. We are great. Look at the returns we've just delivered with our recommendations on Discovery and Viacom. Did you have any idea what was going on behind the scenes at that point, Michael, or were you trying to do it on fundamental?
So we have 400 clients, the biggest institutions in the world, and one of our clients was calling us up and saying, buy these stocks here, right? It was the weirdest move we've ever seen, right? There wasn't, on the sell side where there was institutional support for the name. Both these names were at some point just on their own, right? It was the weirdest thing we've ever seen in our careers, basically. They were working without any real support from our client base.
The offering that you saw, you probably thought it was a good idea. In hindsight, do you think that? What do you think? No, you didn't think it was a good idea.
No, Joe, we could have sell it Viacom, but a day later, right? We rushed, you saw the note, we rushed it out. It was a very large note. We couldn't get it timed. I thought they were popping their own bubble, and so we could have sold Viacom, Thursday of last week, because yes, it was a good idea for them to raise money, but it pretty much announced to the world that the valuation they had was unsustainable and ridiculous, right? So, great for them, they raised money. Bad for them, they wiped out a firm and pretty much identified a bubble in their stock, which will probably never happen again, right?
And Michael, what do you think of this? Morgan Stanley underwrote that $3 billion offering, and yet they also were working with Bill Wang at the same time and worried about his own account. Therefore, they should have had close to perfect information on this.
Yeah.
Or not.
It was a complex, bad banking. It was a bad decision, obviously, right? We couldn't identify. That's why that size of that offering, that price, was so aggressive, right? Like there wasn't support for that offering. So much that said, look, guys, just want to let you know, the past month of trading has been one firm that's leveraged 5 times, right? That would have been helpful for the company making that decision. I think if you talked to Discovery, they would have said, we have no interest in doing that. We talked to them that day and that week. They were not interested in doing it. And I think you're right. It's a great question. Like, why didn't Morgan Stanley put the brakes on this idea for Viacom, knowing what they know about the demand side of that offering?
So you went back, you go back to buy on Viacom after the fall? No, still not.
No, we're selling Viacom. We're buying Discovery. I mean, the big picture you guys ask me about all the time is that this is a tough transition for these companies, right? Like, you have a great business model in the traditional cable bundle, and now you're going into a different model that's very capital intensive, that's loss-making. It's just a tough transition. We thought Discovery had an easier time, so we were buying Discovery. But my valuation never made sense. And Joe, like we wrote on that note, we never thought Discovery would double within 90 days, right? That's not normal. Yeah. We're honest.
For whatever reason. All right. You call me Joe, Michael. From now on, I'd really like to be known as Meta Kernan. Meta Kernan is something. We had a Meta Coven on, but we got to go. Meta Andrew. You like Meta Sorkin? Meta Sorkin. Huh?
And by the way, I need to correct my correction on Pershing and Bill Ackman. I had it at $5 billion, then I took it down to $4 billion. Now it's 4.7 plus Bill's got $1 billion in it, so probably closer to 6. So, what that's worth. When we come back 2 big hours ahead, we'll just check the media names, the Archegos Crossfire. Up next, we're going to dig into the bank and how Goldman managed to move faster than its rivals. We're back after this.
Breaking down what went wrong at Archegos Capital and asking whether or not it could happen again. Plus questions this morning about Bill Wang's mystery charity. Yeah, okay. Details straight ahead. Plus, the Dow closing at a record high, but one market pro is warning of higher inflation and higher rates as stimulus checks reach bank accounts. Wharton finance professor Jeremy Siegel is here to tell us what he sees. And the CDC director warning that the United States is heading for what she calls impending doom as COVID cases rise. That's despite new data that show Moderna and Pfizer vaccines are proving highly effective at preventing infections in real-world conditions. We've got the latest on the fight against the pandemic straight ahead as the second hour of Squawk Box begins right now.
Dow Futures this hour. Still about 2.5 hours before the market opens right now, but things looking marginally down on the Dow, off about a point. Maybe we'll turn it around. We'll call it flat for now. Or even Nasdaq off about 90 points. S&P 500 looking to open down about 9 points. Joe.
Yeah, there weren't big gains earlier, but the Dow was positive, up 50 or 60 earlier, and the Nasdaq was not down as much. So things have worsened a little bit in the last hour. Archegos Capital's fund meltdown burned banks like Nomura and Credit Suisse and founder Bill.
아, 다리 운동 조금만 해야지. 오른쪽 다리 살짝 접질렸어요. 아, 왼쪽 접질렸으면 큰일 날 뻔했어. 왼쪽에 인대 끊어진대. 여러분 다리 운동 그만하겠습니다. 다리 운동. 다리에 힘 빠지니까 접질립니다. 아, 아파. 오른쪽 다리 접질렸어.
IRS filings show it purchased shares of several private offshore entities money. It also had a large Morgan Stanley swap loss investment that lost $5 million. Regulators say all of this is very unusual for charity. He did donate one very profitable investment in Amazon. Andrew, you'll like this one. In 2018, he gave the foundation Amazon shares worth $30 million. He bought them for just under $10 million. So that's a $20 million gain. But he not only avoided the capital gains of that $20 million, but he gets to deduct the gift to offset his income taxes. Now, the foundation had over $16 million in grants in 2018, so he's been very generous with this money, with $5.5 million going to the Fuller Foundation, $2 million going to the Fuller Theological Seminary, $1.2 million to the Museum of the Bible, also a lot of big gifts to schools in Inglewood, New Jersey, and Manhattan. So look, guys, we should be very clear. This foundation, $500 million. He has been extremely generous with this money every year. A lot of questions, though, about the way it has invested its assets and whether those investments are related to or perhaps serving his family office investments. Guys,
Yeah, that immediately is the feeling that you, because it's so bizarre. Some of the, to run your charity the same way you're running your crazy hedge fund, which we now know is, there was some big bets being made, and that's normally what you might think for the way you have a foundation invested. And then it immediately begs the question, is there any synergy, if you will, symphony between the positions?
yeah, exactly. And especially when I talked to some former attorneys general yesterday and attorneys who specialize this, it's the offshore private entity.
아, 일요일에도 다리 운동 하고 나서 살짝
살짝
집중했는데. 아, 다리 운동 조금만 하겠습니다.
Invest in a private offshore entity, all of which lost money, in addition to an elaborate Morgan Stanley swap loss that generated a loss of $5 million. All of those.
축구 선수 십자인대 후반전이 잘 끊어져요. 다리 힘 풀렸을 때.
It's just so unusual for a foundation to make those kinds of investments. Usually they're very plain vanilla conservative investments. Preserve capital and grow it so you can give more away.
운동 초반이나 후반에 많이 발생합니다.
It works with anything. Really? I don't know whether is that good for you? Robert Mediford. Anna Sorkin, what's up?
I love it. I'll take it. I'm going to we're going to continue to discuss the small one right now. Joining us is definitely Vanity Fair editor. Of course, is also a CBC contributor at CBC.com. Thank you, reporter. Thank you both for being with us. His latest article, I should mention, analysis how Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley avoided those losses before the end of those margin call. And for that, Hugh, why don't we start with you? Explain talking in the last hour how it appears that Credit Suisse and Morgan got caught flat-footed. Credit Suisse and Morgan Stanley appeared to call the default on at the same time. Why?
I agree with you. I think this is a case where being slow to act is the same as being wrong. So the street has $30 billion worth of stock to try to unload starting Friday. Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs were the first to do so. Goldman Sachs actually unloading $10.5 billion on Friday alone. They transmitted to their clients. And so, I think this is just a case where everybody's hitting for the exits. Risk management through risk management dictates that you act fast.
아메리카노.
Bethany, we've seen this
여러분도 저기에 나오는 분들처럼 될 수 있어요. 여기 있는 사람들처럼 될 수 있습니다.
But I was just going to say, some things never change, right? And as much as Goldman has changed over the years,
운동하는데 화가 왜 나요,
they
선생님?
haven't changed. And so Goldman was well collateralized, unlike some of its peers involved in this. And you also saw a reaching, a desperation at the top of the market on the part of firms like Nomura and Credit Suisse that don't know what they're doing in the prime brokerage business as much as Goldman and Morgan Stanley, and were desperate to get in and probably didn't ask for the same degree of visibility into the positions that Goldman and Morgan did, and certainly didn't ask for the same degree of collateralization. So, but I do think, even if the fallout from this seems to be somewhat contained at this moment, it does, when you look at the complexity of some of the financial instruments that were involved here, like these contract for differences that really aren't that well understood. And the fact that all these years later, prime brokerages still don't have that much insider visibility into what a big firm could be doing across all of its PB relationships, and this firm was unique in the extent of those relationships. You wonder if Lehman London, long-term capital management,
그 뭐야 보고 싶은 게 보여요 항상. 보고 싶은 게 보입니다. 운동을 열심히 하는 사람은 열심히 하는 게 보이고 화를 많이 내는 사람은 화 내는 것처럼 보이겠죠. 자기가 생각하는 대로 보여져요. 생각하는 대로 보여집니다. 화를 잘 내는 사람은 화가 나는 것처럼 보이고. 나루토님 안녕하세요. 나루토님 잘 지냈어요. 나루토님 제가 기억이 안 나요. 죄송합니다. 나루토님 누구세요? 나루토님 저 언제부터 팔로우 하셨어요? 제가 머리가 좋은 편이 아니라 좀 소개를 부탁드려요. 반갑습니다. 나루토님도 잘 지내셨어요? 네. 나루토님 소개를 부탁드려요. 제가 좀 기억력이 좋지가 않아요. 안 좋은 기억력으로. 네. 노래 잘하시네요. 노래 그냥 즐겁게 합니다. 노래를 즐거워해요.
Well, let me ask you, because actually, I'll ask you the question that Becky asked me at the top, which is, do you think that all the prime brokers and the banks that were managing their trades understood the full extent of the leverage that the bank was working with? Meaning, did each know that they were lending oftentimes on similar securities? If they did, isn't that a problem?
What answer you can't know with 100% certainty. Really, I think better that part. What can you do then to protect yourself? Well, if you're Goldman or Morgan Stanley is the biggest Goldman
나루토님
global prime broker. You're going to have to demand
나루토님
conservative, and your cost of capital that you
나루토
is going to be slightly higher. And as Bethany noted, Nomura, I think, is outside the top 10. Credit Suisse is
아 그러세요? 나루토님 반갑습니다.
when you're smaller,
나루토님 반갑습니다.
really small prime brokers. If you're Morgan Stanley or Goldman
나루토님 반갑습니다.
conditions that protect you,
부스터 드시고.
things go south.
아니요, 저 부스터 같은 거 안 먹어요.
Bethany, history may be repeating itself. In the short term, are you anticipating that prime brokers are calling firms that are heavy in single stocks right now, for example, and forcing them to take some of that?
지금 공부 한 14시간 정도 돼갖고 비타민 C랑 그 다음에 BCA 먹었어요. 비타민 C랑 BCA 먹었습니다. 그래서 네, 저 부스터 안 먹어요. 저 비타민 C랑 BCA 먹었어요. 네. 그냥 맛으로 먹었어요. 맛으로. 비타민 C는 먹으면 확실히 몸에 좋은 것 같은 느낌이 들고요. BCA는 그냥 마시면 맛있어서 먹었어요. 여기 스티비아 좀 들어서 맛으로 먹었어요. 그리고 뭐 공복에 운동하니까 부스터는 아예 안 드시는. 부스터 안 먹죠. 부스터 뭐 아니 부스터 먹을 필요가 뭐가 있어요. 저녁에 밥 먹는데. 네. 부스터 먹을 필요 없죠. 부스터 몸에 좋은 거 없어요, 여러분. 몸에 좋은 부스터가 없어요. 저 부스터 아침에 일어나서 올가닉 커피 마셔요. 네. 네, 그게 제 부스터예요. 잠이 제 부스터예요. 잠하고 저녁에 먹는 밥이 제
Let's see
부스터예요.
right now, the Dow Futures have turned down. Yesterday, the Dow closed at another new record. It was up by almost 100.
아 이제 무슨
This morning, right now,
거랄까?
they get it down by about 20 points, and that's a reversal from where we were just over an hour ago. S&P futures are down by about 10 and a half now, and the Nasdaq is under even more pressure than it had been earlier. It's
리버스
down
컬 해야
by
되겠다.
90
리버스 컬.
points, probably because of rates and yield. We'll check on that when we come back. Swap
이제는
price,
리버스
we'll
컬
be
하겠습니다.
right back.
리버스 컬 하겠습니다. 리버스 컬. 자, 여러분 이제 리버스 컬 할게요. 꿀팁 네. 아메리카노 드시나 보다 아침에 아메리카노 네. 집에 커피 머신 있어서 거기서 올가닉 커피 코스코에서 사서 내려서 먹어요. 아메리카노 좋아 좋아 아메리카노 좋아 좋아 아메리카노 좋아 아메리카노 좋아 좋아 아메리카노 아메리카노 좋아 좋아 아메리카노. 저의 부스터는 저녁에 먹는 밥 두세 공기, 탄수화물 100에서 150g. 네. 이 저의 부스터입니다. 저랑 같이 아저씨가 되어 가시는. 저는 아저씨 안 되는데 세연님은 아저씨가 될지 몰라도 저는 안 되는데요. 박지연님 안녕하세요. 아니 이게 어디 가봐서 아저씨예요? 머리도 예쁘게 잘랐는데 어저께 제가 잘랐어요. 여러분 제가 잘랐습니다. 잘 잘랐죠? 10분 만에. 이게 어디 봐서 아저씨 이게. 세연님 블락 시킬까? 세연님 블락 세연님 블락 시킬까요? 지금 네 어디가 봐서 아저씨야. 자, 나 두세 공기도 주무시고 아침에 공복 운동 저도 해보겠습니다. 저는 저녁 식사 아침 식사까지 하고 운동 가려고 뭐야? 아침 식사까지 하고 온다. 탄수화물 많이 먹으면요 오히려 집중 안 돼요. 네. 탄수화물 먹으면 졸려요. 저녁에 졸리면 좋잖아요. 잠 잘 자서. 네. 저는 탄수화물 저녁에만 먹습니다. 웬만하면. 저 두 끼 먹어요. 아침에 한 끼, 저녁에 한 끼. 아침에 보통 몇 시에 먹냐면 한 11시 정도에 한 끼 먹어요. 단백질하고 야채. 그리고 두 번째 식사는 한 6시에서 7시 사이에 하나를 먹어요. 그때 단백질, 야채, 밥 대부분 전 밥하고 콩을 좋아해요. 탄수화물. 그렇게 먹습니다. 그래서 하루에 총 탄수화물 한 밥으로 한 150g 정도 섭취하고요. 100g, 150g 탄수화물. 야채 같은 거로 50g 정도 섭취를 해요. 그래서 하루에 한 200g에서 한 250g 정도 탄수화물 섭취합니다. 제 식단 알고 싶으면 여기 제이오 피트니스 제 인스타 팔로우 하시면 거의 제 식단 다 올려요.
Time now for today's athletic question. What was the first U.S. coin to have "In God We Trust" engraved on it? The answer when CNBC's Squawk Box continues.
다라랄라 랄라. 최고의 부스터는 잠이에요. 잠 1시간 자보고 탄수화물 한 1000g 먹고 부스터 먹어봐요. 힘은 하나도 없어요. 근데 잠 한 10시간 자고 부스터 안 먹고 탄수화물 안 먹어봐요. 힘 넘쳐나요. 잠이 최고의 부스터예요. 잠이 최고의 부스터입니다. 최고의 부스터는 최고의 부스터는 잠입니다. 아하하하하하하. 세연님, 비싼 밥 먹고 쓸데없는 소리 하지 말라니까요. 에너지 낭비하는 얘기 좀. 세연님, 알았죠? 비싼 밥 먹고 여기는 세연님 여기는 그렇게 농담 따먹기 하는 곳이 아니에요. 딴 데 가서 그렇게 하시고 네, 좀 이런 거 이거 좋아. 얼마나 좋아. 박지영님 유산소 우선 이런 거 하라고. 이런 거. 오케이? 자, 유산소 한 힘으로 무산소 하라는 게 아니라요. 유산소 할 힘으로 근력 운동을 하시라고요. 왜? 근육이 늘어야 내가 가만히 앉아있는 동안 칼로리를 더 쓰죠. 여러분, 페라리가 시동 켜놓고 있을 때 기름을 많이 쓸까요? 혼다 시빅이 시동을 켜놓고 가만히 있었을 때 기름을 많이 쓸까요? 페라리죠. 근육을 늘려야 됩니다. 근육을. 네. 일반인이 시간이 많아서 근력 운동 충분히 하고 유산소 충분히 할 시간이 있어요? 없어요. 근력 운동 열심히 하세요. 그리고 여러분, 다리 운동 열심히 하면 그거 유산소예요. 정말. 여기다가 심박수 재는 거 가슴에 두르고 나서 다리 운동 엄청 열심히 해보세요. 그러면 다리 세트하면 한 170, 180 올라갔다가 그 다음에 뭐 이거저거 돌아다니고 그러면 한 120으로 떨어졌다가 또 들면 180 올라가 120으로 떨어지면 에버리지 한 150 나와요. 에버리지가 150이면 여러분 달리기 5km를 한 35분? 30분에 뛴 정도의 심박수입니다. 아셨죠?
Thank you, Becky. Great to be back.
you're an incredible filmmaker, an incredible historian, and looking at what we've lived through the last year, I just wonder how you're going to kind of deal with this huge event. I know you've called it the fourth greatest event in terms of the pain and suffering that it's caused in our history in the United States. How do you look at it already, even though we're still so close to all of the events that haven't necessarily done?
We have not escaped it, and so for somebody in the history business, you've got to have 10 years, 15 years, who knows, the way things are accelerating, maybe less than that. But I think this is the worst crisis because it's 3 viruses at once. It's obviously the COVID virus of the quarter. It's the 402-year-old racial injustice, white supremacy, and it's also the age-old, very, very human virus of lying, misinformation, distortion, conspiracy, and all of those working at once are the greatest threat, I believe.
여러분, 근육이 많아지는 길이 여러분 중요합니다. 저 유산소 안 해요. 저 유산소. 유산소 안 해요. 여기 있는 제 고객들 유산소 안 했어요. 여기 있는 사람들 유산소 안 하고 만든 몸이에요. 전부 다 유산소 안 하고 만든 몸이에요. 야외에 나가서 걸으라고 하는데 그거는 기분 좋아지라고 그러는 거고, 그리고 저는 자전거 타는데 이거를 유산소로 타는 게 아니라 야외에 나가서 바람 쐬러 기분 좋아지라고 자전거 타는 거지. 아, 내가 살을 빼야지 헬스장 가고 막 걷는 거 있죠. 그런 거 오히려 더 인슐린을 더 저항성을 높입니다. 여러분, 자연에서 유산소 하는 동물 있어요? 없어요? 없어요. 자연에서 유산소 하는 동물이 어딨어? 우리 몸은 소모품이에요. 너무 많이 쓰면 빨리 닳아. 이렇게 움직일 거를 여러분 근력운동 하는 데 쓰세요. 유산소 하는 데 쓰지 마시고. 유산소 하려면 어떤 유산소가 가장 좋냐면 몸 쌩쌩하신 분들은 하루에 딱 한 번만 100m를 저쪽으로 딱 뛰세요. 12초에 뛰세요. 한 번만. 그런 유산소 하세요. 아니면 자전거를 죽기 살기로 딱 1분만 팍 타든가.
Unfortunately, and we'll see, but we're really, I think, well suited to do that. And the reason I've stayed with public broadcasting since the late 70s, so I'm a long hauler, as they say, is because I've got complete creative control, and they give me time. I could go, say, for my Vietnam or country music, I could go to a premium cable channel or a streaming service and say, I need $31 million to do each of those. That's basically what the budget is, huge. Because of what I'm doing. And they would have given me the money, but they wouldn't have given me 10 years to do it, which is what I needed. And what we're ramped up now, even in COVID, we're on 8 different projects at once. We'll have a 4-part, 8-hour series on Muhammad Ali to complement the biography of Ernest Hemingway that's coming out next Monday. And streaming at the same time for free.
Let's talk about Hemingway. What did you find that was new, that was surprising?
Well, I think when you get 100 years away from when somebody's writing at their best, it's important to kind of dust it off and remind us why he's such an extraordinary writer, and we've done that.
짧지만 유력한 정보 얻고 갑니다.
But I think the thing about Hemingway, the reason
나루토님.
we know him is because of the myth about him.
네, 나루토님 파이팅 하시고.
Hyper-masculine guy.
아니, 저녁이 지금 8시 30분인데 아직도 퇴근을 안 했어요? 아니, 그럼 이렇게 늦게 가면 잠은 언제 자고 운동은 언제 해요?
inner life, which we were able to kind of get
와, 지금 시간까지 퇴근 안 시키는 데가 있어요?
He helped construct about himself. A lot of it fraudulent.
잠은 언제 자고 운동은 언제?
Get to some vulnerabilities that remind us how topical he is now. I'll give you one or two examples. He wrote a couple of short stories up in Michigan and Hills Like White Elephant that put himself or put the reader in the mind of a woman who's being, how shall we say, toxically manipulated by a man, which is sort of what he did, at least he pretended to do all his life. So all of a sudden that rearranges our own molecules. He's very interested in gender fluidity. He has his 4 wives, cut their hair short. He grows his long. He's got an interesting character. And so I think what Lynn and I have done is sort of exposed the fraudulence of the myth and gotten around it to get at the much more interesting real person and the turbulent and in the end, as we all know, tragic life of but remains undeniable is just how spectacular his writing is and how he changed American writing. He is and literature is the most important writer in the 20th century. So I can't wait for you to see it. It's super complicated.
40분.
Ken, I want to thank you very much for being here. We missed you, but it's good to see you. It's good to see this new content that you have coming out too. We'll talk to you again soon. Thank you for your time.
Lots going on. Thank you.
Andrew?
Thanks, Becky. Still to come this morning right here on Squawk Board. Jeremy Siegel is going to join us for his take on all this volatility that's taking place in the markets.
걸으시려면 야외 나가서 기분 전환으로 걸으세요. 헬스장에서 걸어주시지 마시고. 여러분, 헬스장에 있는 이 조명이 몸에 안 좋아요. 공기도 몸에 안 좋고. 나가서 걷든가 가만히 앉아 계세요. 아시죠? 헬스장에 있는 시간을 최소한으로 하세요. 공기가 안 좋다니까요, 밖에보다. 그리고 여기 있는 그냥 일반 형광등이 LED 라이트보다 눈에 덜 해로워요. 근데 웬만한 요새 헬스장 전부 다 LED예요. 근데 가장 좋은 건 박재령님 본인이 기분 좋으면 최고예요. 본인이 좋은 게 최고예요. 본인이 좋은 게 아셨죠? 제가 뭐라고 하든 누가 뭐라고 하든 본인한테 좋으면 그게 최고입니다. 아시죠? 그냥 네 남의 말보다 내가 좋으면 최고예요. 내가 좋고 나한테 효과가 많으면 그게 최고예요. 그래서 박재령 형이 지금 하시고 계시는 게 나한테 좋다. 그러면 그게 최고예요. 아시죠? 근데 내가 하고 있는 방식이 아무런 결과가 없다. 그러면 그 방식은 좋은 방식이 아니에요. 근데 내가 하는 방식이 좋은 결과가 있다. 그러면 내 방식이 좋은 거예요. 아시죠? 내가 하는 방식이 지금 좋은 결과가 있다면 좋은 방식이고 아니면 아닌 겁니다. 효과가 있으면 됩니다. 효과가. 오케이? 효과가 있으면 좋은 방식. 효과가 없으면 그 방식은 좋은 방식이 아니에요.
Welcome back to Squawk Box. I'm Dominic Chu here with your Market Minute. It's early in the trading week, but there are some shorter-term themes that are developing right now that we want to keep a close eye on. First of all, check out what's happening with some of the moves in the reopening type trades, right?
룰루라면 어떻게
Oil
됐어?
and gas stocks like Occidental, American Airlines on the travel
오늘 8시에 룰루라면 발표한다는데 룰루라면
Over the last couple of weeks, these have been stronger performers in the last few months on the reopening.
룰루라면 오늘 어떻게 될까요? 여러분 룰루라면 아세요? 룰루라면? 룰루레몬 어떻게 됩니까? 아세요 여러분? 룰루레몬
Apple, Amazon, and Microsoft. Over the last week, these stocks here have contributed nothing really to the S&P. In fact, it's
룰루레몬 어떻게 됐어요?
2.5%, and Microsoft up by 2% as well. Remember, these three stocks are 15% of the S&P 500 and roughly almost 30% of the NASDAQ 100 as well. And then you guys have the Squawk stack. We have here the Archegos stack. We'll show you some of the pre-market action with
룰루라면 오늘 룰루라면이 오늘 실적 발표해서 오늘 아침에 룰루라면이 오늘 실적을 발표해요. 실적 발표합니다. 그래서 8시에 오늘 룰루라면 어떻게 사업이 돌아가고 전화가 있어요. 그러면 8시에 있다가 룰루라면 실적 어떻게 되는지 한번 들어보려고요. 룰루라면에다가 제가 투자하려고요. 룰루라면 제가 좋아하는 회사라. 캐나다, 미국은 나이키보다 제가 아는 사람들은 룰루를 훨씬 좋아해요. 나이키는 저는 신발은 나이키가 짱입니다. 옷은 지금 입고 있는 건 룰루예요. 룰루. 신발은 진짜 나이키가 짱이에요. 신발은 나이키. 신발은 나이키가 지금 제일 좋아요. 잠바는 저는 노스페이스. 뜨뜻한 잠바는. 뜨뜻한 잠바 노스페이스가 뜨뜻한 잠바는 노스페이스가 최고로 좋아요. 캐나다 구스는 모르겠어요. 그냥 비싸기만 한 것 같아요. 캐나다 구스는 잘 모르겠어요. 요즘에 제가 가지고 있는 주식들 계좌가 흘러내려서 조금 불편합니다. 조금 불편합니다. 제가 가지고 있는 주식의 계좌가 흘러내려서 조금 불편합니다. 이거 뭐 오늘 다 흘러내 빨간색 다 흘러내렸어요.
Joining us now for an update, talk about what is possibly ahead. Jeremy Siegel, professor of finance at University of Pennsylvania's the Wharton School. It looks like Jeremy, you do note, and I want to get your thoughts on these tax hikes that are coming and the stimulus. But all in, you think that maybe the stimulus counteracts any of the headwinds from the higher taxes to with the market ending up for the year, but not gangbusters, but maybe 10%, even after these gains we've seen for the past year.
Right. I mean, the stimulus is unprecedented. It's too much, in my opinion, because I do think there's going to be a lot of inflation this year, far above the Fed target. I think this is basically good for corporations. They're going to have a lot of pricing ability, control, and they'll raise prices and the demand will be there. So profits will be high, but the Biden administration is going to take away some of those higher taxes. I definitely think this week we're going to get a Biden announcement of the infrastructure bill with the tax hikes.
With the tax. 40분. 다 이제 여러분 딱 한 세트만 하고 끝내겠습니다. 한 세트만 하고 끝낼게요.
So you figure that compromise that we've been talking about on corporate taxes, 25% gets done. You think that actually gets done with on a partisan basis?
여러분 한 세트 하고 끝내겠습니다.
I think Joe Manchin is controlling a lot of it. I think a lot of those moderate Democrats said, to go to 25, they thought they negotiated at 25 under Trump, and then all of a sudden the Republicans came out with a 21% bill. They sort of felt, hey, this wasn't what I had. So they wanted to go back to 25. I think they're going to take away the reduction in that top rate from 39.6 down to 37 that Trump negotiated. However, on the uncapping of Social Security and a number of those other things, the moderate Democrats are not for. I do think this is going to be along party lines. I think it will be a 51-50 vote. They've got to get Manchin on, and he is for the infrastructure bill. So I think that that is what is going to happen.
Yeah, and they may do the estate tax. There's an article.
And the estate tax. Trump doubled all exemptions and on that, and that was not what the Democrats wanted. Now I don't think we're going back. With what we had, let's say 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I think that Biden wanted the $3 million exemption. I mean, it's going to be more generous, but nowhere near as generous as it was under Trump.
They may do the step up.
And the step up of basis, I think, is also going to come. Don't forget, the Republicans through on party line. The Democrats say we're going to roll a lot of this back on party line. I just think state and local government cap will be significant. Remember, Democrats that say, hey, that's a sine qua non for my support. Biden wants to reach that deduction not at the top rate, say a lower rate. So there's going to be a big coming up. And they will be liberalized.
Good.
Benefit the high end and will cost them.
That's one thing the Democrats they're going to have to squaddle that. A lot of them are not happy.
자, 오늘의 영상의 제목은 뭘로 할까요? 오늘의 제목은 뭘로 할까요, 여러분? 오늘의 영상의 제목은 봅시다. 오늘의 영상의 제목은 가장 좋은 부스터. 오늘의 제목은 부스터로 할까요? 아니면 여러 가지로 해야 되겠다. 그냥 오늘의 제목. 다이어트에는 그걸 해야 되겠다. 다이어트에는 유산소 대 무산소. 다이어트 다이어트 근육 증가. 다이어트 유산소 운동, 근력운동. 중 뭐가 좋을까요? 자, 검사하기. 좋습니다. 원문 복사. 오늘의 제목은 이거예요. 오늘의 제목은 이거로 하겠습니다. 동영상 수정. 동영상 수정. 자, 이렇게 하겠습니다. 뭐가 좋을까요? 그러면 라이브 볼까? 제목을 유산소 다이어트 유산소 근력운동 자, 바꿨습니다. 오케이. 좋아요. 좋습니다. 좋아요. 오늘은 여러분 여기까지 하도록 하겠고요. 자, 저는 그러면 내일은 제가 바빠서 굉장히 일찍 해야 돼요. 몇 시에 하냐? 아마 한 새벽에 4, 5시에 할 것 같아요. 하여튼 뭐 그렇게 하겠습니다. 여러분 영상이 유용하다고 생각하시면 좋아요, 구독, 알람 설정 부탁드립니다. 아시죠? 좀 공손한 자세로 해야 되나 이렇게? 네. So thanks for watching today. If you found this video helpful, please hit that like button and share with your friends and family. Considering subscribe to my channel. Okay? Please. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you. 감사합니다.